There we go. Is that better? Thank you. Okay, good morning and welcome to First Parish Unitarian Universalist Canton. My name is Don Seaman and I will be your worship associate this morning. I'm joined this morning by our minister, Rev Dr Clyde Grubbs, and our ministerial intern, Elizabeth Foster. This community honors diversity and joyfully welcomes all who share the values and principles of our congregation. We're glad that you have chosen to worship with us today, and we hope you find your time with us to be meaningful. Are there any other announcements? There being none, I will turn it over to Reverend Dr. Grubbs.
Our invocation this morning is by Sarah Moores Campbell. It speaks of the need to open ourselves to the light of new possibilities. It's called Rolling Away the Stone. In the tomb of the soul, we carry secret yearnings, pains, frustrations, loneliness, fears, regrets, and worries. In the tomb of the soul, we take refuge from the world and its heaviness. In the tomb of the souls, we wrap ourselves in the security of darkness. Sometimes this is a comfort, sometimes it is an escape. Sometimes it prepares us for experience, sometimes it insulates us from life. Sometimes the tomb life gives us time to feel the pain of the world and reach out to heal others. Sometimes it numbs us and locks us up with our own concerns. In this season where light and darkness balance the day, we seek balance for ourselves. Grateful for the darkness that has nourished us, we push away the stone and invite the light to awaken us to the possibilities within us and among us, possibilities for new life in ourselves and in our world. For Easter's promise of renewal, resurrection of life and soul, we have lit our chalice. Let us join in the covenant which you'll find in your order of service. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is his sacrament, and service is his prayer. To dwell together in peace with respect and understanding, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve our fellows and humankind, in the end that all souls shall grow together in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each other and with our God, by whatsoever name we worship. Please join me in singing 269, Lo, the Day of Days is Here. 269 in the gray hymnal. Thank you.
So we have a story this morning, and we have a story about this story. And what I'm talking about this morning is, why do we have an Easter bunny that lays eggs? So the story that I have been told is a story of the Celtic goddess Ostara, who was waking up this spring, and a little bird had injured his wing very badly, and he came hopping up to the goddess Ostara on his little broken bird feet, and he tugged on her mantle, and he said, "Hey, can you heal me?" And she said, "Little bird, I am very busy waking up the spring, but what I can do is I can turn you into a bunny, because, that's easier than healing a bird, I guess." So she turned him into a bunny, and he happily hopped off. But every spring around that date, this bunny remembers that he was once a bird, and he lays eggs in gratitude. Now, yes, of course. I don't know why exactly this bird has turned into a bunny, or why that's easier, and it turns out no one else exactly does as well, because we don't really know where this story comes from. It's possible that it is an old Celtic pagan story of the goddess Ostara, but we actually only have records of it dating back to about 1800 or so. Because, unfortunately, the Catholic Church sort of wiped out a lot of the stories that we did have. So we do know that the Christian historian Bede references Ostara in the 8th century, so she was certainly a goddess who existed at some point. And there are also some archaeological indications that rabbits and hares, which are a different kind of creature, I found out from a biologist yesterday, that have no relation to bunnies at all, probably had a sacred status in early Celtic societies. There are a lot of rabbit brooches in beautiful colors, and we find evidence of rabbits that are buried in sacred ways. So perhaps this is all true. How it came to this country is that we have records of the German Easter hare that go back to at least 1572. But there is absolutely no explanation whatsoever of why this hare lays eggs. It just does. So perhaps they're related, perhaps they're not. We do know that rabbits have been symbols of the Virgin Mary for a very long time, and that other cultures have also decorated eggs to celebrate the arrival of spring for a very long time, like the Iranian holiday of Nowruz, and Eastern Orthodox egg painting. So obviously the most important question here is, why are the eggs chocolate now? And that is entirely the fault of the Germans. So these traditions of egg hunts and making chocolate eggs hopped over the pond with the Pennsylvania Dutch. That was a very funny pun, you should laugh. And children in Pennsylvania were participating in church Easter egg hunts as early as the 1750s. Another interesting thing that I found out when I was trying to tell you all the story of the Easter Bunny is that the Easter Bunny is usually described as male, and this may simply be because the men who wrote down these various legends identified every creature as male, as a matter of course, when they were writing, even though this bunny lays eggs, so it's kind of confusing. But it definitely persists today, and I like to think that perhaps this creature of miraculous transformations, who maybe used to be a bird and who lays eggs, is a trans bunny, and why not add that to the story? Since a lot of things have been added already. So you can successfully enjoy your chocolate eggs today, knowing that they are still just as mysterious as when they were perhaps dropped on your doorstep as a child. And that is sort of the story of the Easter Bunny.
Her
We cannot come to Easter morning without passing through the agony of the crucifixion of a holy rebel at the hands of empire, and the sad, anxious uncertainty of the waiting in the days that followed. Perhaps some of you are still there in a metaphorical sense. Perhaps this season of your life does not yet feel like Easter. We are living through frightening times, and it seems more sensible to despair than to proclaim any sort of good news. But we are challenged this morning to hold on to hope nonetheless, to believe that this is not the end of the story. To believe, perhaps, that once long ago a woman saw a tomb standing empty and rejoiced. To believe, certainly, that resurrections of all kinds are a possibility. That after a seemingly endless winter, spring will come again. And it is not only that hope that we are called to, but the way in which we are called to live into it. To pull ourselves out of the clock time of our concerns and fears and envision the beloved community, and have the temerity to work to make that vision real. Jesus asked his followers, "Love one another as I have loved you." And the work of Easter and the work of Unitarian Universalism, with our commitment to the interdependent web of existence of which we are all a part, is to answer some version of this call, to love one another and to continue to build the beloved community even in these times. Practice resurrection. Come again and again to hope. And we will sit in that waiting silence for a few moments together. Our reading this morning is a poem by Wendell Berry, with which some of you may be familiar. It's called Manifesto, the Mad Farmer Liberation Front. Love the quick profit, the annual raise, vacation with pay. Want more of everything ready-made. Be afraid to know your neighbors and die. And you will have a window in your head. Not even your future will be a mystery anymore. Your mind will be punched in a card and shut away in a little drawer. When they want you to buy something, they will call you. When they want you to die for profit, they will let you know. So friends, every day do something that doesn't compute. Love the Lord, love the world, work for nothing. Take all that you have and be poor. Love someone who does not deserve it. Denounce the government and embrace the flag. Hope to live in that free republic for which it stands. Give your approval to all you cannot understand. Praise ignorance, for what man has not encountered, he has not destroyed. Ask the questions that have no answers. Invest in the millennium. Plant sequoias. Say that your main crop is the forest that you did not plant, that you will not live to harvest. Say that the leaves are harvested when they have rotted into the mold. Call that profit. Prophesy such returns. Put your faith in the 2 inches of humus that will build under the trees every 1,000 years. Listen to carrion. Put your ear close and hear the faint chattering of the songs that are to come. Expect the end of the world. Laugh. Laughter is immeasurable. Be joyful, though you have considered all the facts. So long as women do not go cheap for power, please women more than men. Ask yourself, will this satisfy a woman satisfied to bear a child? Will this disturb the sleep of a woman near to giving birth? Go with your love to the fields, lie down in the shade, rest your head in her lap. Swear allegiance to what is highest in your thoughts. As soon as the generals and the politicals can predict the motions of your mind, lose it. Leave it as a sign to mark the false trail, the way you didn't go. Be like the fox who makes more tracks than necessary, some in the wrong direction. Practice resurrection.
Practice resurrection. Being aware, being bold, living fully who you are. Wendell Berry says, practice Practice. Practice. Through practice, we become good at something. Practice. Easter. For millennia, this time has been the merger of spring in the northern temperate climates with the beauty of flowers and the greening of grasses. The merger. Buds on the trees and birds singing in the trees. The resurrection of life after a long, long winter. And then another story. Another story is blended with the spring festival. The story of a defeated band of Jewish fishermen and peasants whose leader had been murdered for teaching an ethic of love. Imagine their shock. Imagine the grief combined with terror. That they were afraid and they were rallied. They experienced their leader telling them, "Whenever two or more are gathered in love and justice, I am among you." And they experienced that to be true. The resurrection stories, the Easter stories, the return of spring and the return of hope. How do we hear these stories in this time, especially this Sunday in 2023, when Easter time is a liminal time, a time when the old way is dying, a time when we must change, where our society is unsustainable, they say, unsustainable. It can't keep going on this way. It's unsustainable. We are toxic and dangerous to life. How do we celebrate spring when the planet is undergoing dramatic change? Spring is a time of warming, and soon hundreds and thousands of tons of ice will fall into the ocean because of the warming we're celebrating. Glaciers have existed for tens of thousands of years, will disappear this summer, just like they disappeared last summer and the summer before that. Even our winters are impacted by the warming. Heat from the South Pacific pushes its way up to the Arctic, sending the Arctic cold down over North America. And we experienced that this winter, and later flooding the center of our country and sending tornadoes in February. And then the winters are too warm for the local maples to make syrup. It's different. It's changing. Yes, Easter, and according to custom, the tradition prompts us to say, "Rejoice! Rejoice!" But our expectations of Easter time no longer seems inevitable. People are frightened. People despair. People say, how can we go on if it's going to continue like this? People who were in the past conscientious and hopeful people confess fear and a sense of hopelessness. Some tell me that climate change is going to kill us. Kill us, they say. Or the virus will destroy civilization. Or the grand old partisans will give us fascism. Hope seems quaint, Pollyannish. I'm asked, how can we keep hope alive given the clock counting down to catastrophe? What is the source of my hope? I do have faith. I do have faith in the living earth who brought us to life and sustains us. She is calling us. She is calling her children. We are of this earth, and the earth is not hostile to our kind. Yes, our institutions and powers that rule over us are hostile to life, to the earth herself. But by listening to the earth, we can return to right relationship. Yes, we need to remember to listen to her. We are not in charge. That's the first confession we must make. We are not in charge. She is. Listen, as she tells us, plants take carbon out of the atmosphere, and through the process of photosynthesis, oxygen is released. Plants in the ocean take carbon out of the ocean, and the oceans are cooled. And when the waters of the earth cool, the atmosphere cools. Seaweed can be encouraged. Seaweed cools the ocean. More seaweed, more cooling. Plants can be planted. They're recovering whole sections of the Sahara now, the people of Africa, planting trees. The percentage of carbon in the atmosphere has actually gone down because of the pandemic. In the last 3 years, pandemic arrest, they tell me, has caused the less use of vehicles and things like that, and airplanes, and that carbon has come down in the atmosphere. More plants are growing. So in the last 2 centuries, industrial and urban development has removed plants, and our economic activity carbonizes the atmosphere and waters. Yet with foresight and cooperation, we can prevail. It's not simply a blind hope, it's a hope coupled with action. Human beings working together can work with the earth and not against the earth. Human beings have had enough experience also like with viruses. We know about viruses. We can anticipate, stockpile, and prepare. There were no respirators in warehouses when the virus was introduced. That was because planners didn't put them there. They said, we don't need them. How does one practice resurrection in our time? How do we give life and love and courage when the news is scary, when our expectations of the future seem contradicted by bad news pouring in? There's a saying attributed to John Murray, the first Universalist preacher in North America. John Murray said, "Go out onto the highways and byways of this country and give the people something of your new vision. You may possess a small light, but let it shine. And preach love and hope and courage. Give them not hell, but hope and courage. Preach kindness and everlasting love." Brought to our own times, we cannot win people to the work of loving this earth, working with her to sustain a sustainable future by preaching hell, nor by dwelling on impending catastrophe, by saying famine, plague, rising seas, and soil depletion, and just scaring people. We should never deny these are the threats, but fear does not motivate people. Fear elicits fearful response. Trying to scare each other into a green future will be experienced as coercive, and people's defensive mechanism will say, I don't want to hear anymore. It doesn't compel people into action. Trying to scare people into that future is not going to work. So I want to tell a story. I remember this story from a few years ago. I'm 99% sure they're talking about Indianapolis. This one man, he wanted to save a park. There were plans by the city and by the big developers to build a dam, and the park would be flooded. The powers that be argued this was necessary for the economic development of the city. Over time, he kept talking about that park being flooded, and we needed to stop it. And over time, the congregation that he belonged to involved itself in saving the park and got other organizations in the community, other congregations, civic organizations involved. And after many months, they won. The park was saved. The initiator shared what motivated him. He said he was exhausted from struggle, and when he was exhausted from struggle, when he felt discouraged, he went to the park and its beauty, the sound of the birds, the smell of the flower, just the layout of the park, empowered him, renewed him. He said he struggled to save the park motivated by love, not fear and anger, love. He loved that park. Another story. This one personal. I served a congregation in Pasadena, California. And when I came, there was a drought in Los Angeles. That's not news to anybody, is it? And the congregation said the water bills were just going just going up and up, the water bills for the congregation. And they had a lawn, and they had poured water onto that lawn, and it took a lot to keep that lawn green. A lawn in the basin of Los Angeles. It cost a lot to keep that lawn green. And the grounds contractors' bills were getting even higher and higher. And it was just a big part of their budget. And they asked, how are we going to continue to afford this building, this lawn, their staff? They would need to cut back. Something would go. The congregation started to look at possibilities, and they decided to convert the lawn to desert flowers, and use the water collected in rain buckets to grow vegetables on what had been a pretty green lawn. Now everybody had a lawn in Pasadena. Everybody said, oh, we got to have a lawn because that's what Pasadena is, a pretty town with green lawns. Tearing up the lawn, planting desert flowers? Heresy. Controversy. What will people say? What will people say? But they decided to work with their environment, not social convention. And they recognized the times were changing, and piping water in from the Sierras, the mountains, was going to be expensive and more expensive and more expensive. Since then, the congregation has a beautiful grounds with desert flowers. And the congregation has grown because people saw a religious community that walked its talk and witnessed that a sustainable future was possible. And young people who wanted to be part of the change, to say no to despair and make a difference, joined the congregation and grew pumpkins in Pasadena with rainwater. They practiced resurrection from a small, somewhat inwardly focused congregation. They work with the earth, respect the limits of water, and express the gifts of their members. We can think of other examples. People sharing their love for the earth, not surrendering to fear and despair, choosing life over death. People are inventing new ways to teach and plan and play and learn, practicing resurrection, encouraging rather than despairing, celebrating the beauty of the earth and justice making together. And may this Easter be a blessing to us all. Let us sing. Oh, when the Spirit says do, number 1024, it's...
When the Spirit says do,
Now hear my benediction. We receive fragments of holiness, glimpses of eternity, brief moments of insight. Let us gather them up for the precious gifts that they are, and renewed by their grace, move boldly into the unknown. Go in peace. Go in love.